And I guess it took me quite a few years. We were angry at the time, but we were hardly what you call investor ready. We had no investment deck, no cash flows, no projections, no premises, nothing other than our enthusiasm. So we had to, in fact, live in Steve's van for 3 months, which we parked outside a squash club, which we joined, so we could have a shower in the morning. Got really good at squash by default.
That was Ian Livingstone talking about how he lived in a van down by the river to get Games Workshop started at a squash. Well, the British version in a van outside a squash club.
What is a British? What does a British van even look like? Hey, you were like that too.
A VW bus, but what do you mean? I didn't live in a van.
No, but you had like humble beginnings.
I had a minivan. Yeah.
But you had humble beginnings.
Yeah.
Every once you were like, my wife and me were selling copies of, was it Marathon at Gen Con? I think that's like your memory of Gen Con, right? And we're doing video now, by the way. Sorry, I'm like all over the place. First seat episode, I'm already interrupting and going crazy.
What you look like. My early memories of Gen Con was, me and Doug and our wives.
Our community manager.
Yes, went up to Milwaukee for Gen Con, and we were selling
Milwaukee.
Yeah, games. Milwaukee, as my youngest would refer to it. I have a picture of the ladies with a Klingon high priestess in a chainmail outfit. It's,
Hey, and you shrink wrap them yourself, right? Like you would shrink wrap them yourself.
Yeah, I had a shrink wrap machine. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. I think I got that from my buddy Nick in college. I don't know why I had a shrink wrap machine laying around. All right, well, this is the first episode of season 3, and we have a lot of new stuff in store for you this season. Not really. I mean, I guess we're doing video.
That's true.
But it's kind of the same old shtick.
It's true. No, we got great guests. Ian is the first one, which is
we do
Sir
have
Ian.
some amazing guests lined up already for this season, so very excited. I met Ian, back in the Myth 1 days.
And he wasn't with Games Workshop anymore? Was he still with Games Workshop?
No, this was when he was at IDOS. So if you don't, listeners, if you don't know Ian started Games Workshop. So if you're familiar with Warhammer, Aaron, have you ever heard of this thing called Warhammer? Have you ever heard of it?
Actually, I have his book right here too. I just got it, this one.
Yeah. And listeners, if you don't know, Aaron is a complete Warhammer junkie. He spends his entire life savings on it. And he's got a lot of kids, so he shouldn't do that. He shouldn't do that. But anyways, Ian started Games Workshop. And then he was one of the founders who put together IDOS Interactive. So if you know Tomb Raider and Hitman,
Tomb Raider. Well, don't tell him the whole episode.
Okay, I'm just trying to say he's had an outsized impact on our industry, and he published, I think it was Myth 2 actually in Europe. That's when I got to meet him, and he was just so nice to us. He was
really down to earth.
He was a good person, super friendly to us. Had no reason to be, and back in the 90s, was it the 90s? Yeah, it was the 90s. Not everybody was super nice, Yeah,
well, I think that's what living in a van will do to you. It'll make you nice.
I'm serious. Give you a little bit of humility. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's also a super humble guy. And he was, so we talked about this a little bit in the second season, I think, about how in Europe, in Britain particularly, the video game industry, I think, has maybe a higher cachet because, we met Peter Molyneux, who was knighted, or had OBE or TBE. They've got this whole recognition from the monarchy, and a lot of folks in the video game industry have been recognized that way. And I guess somebody was telling me the Kennedy Honors here would probably be the equivalent. I don't think we've had anyone from the video
or
game
whenever
industry
you get the medal, the medal that the president gives people. The Medal of Honor,
Presidential Medal of Freedom, or something.
Yeah, a medal. Yeah,
I'm not saying that I want a medal. I'm just saying that Ian not only
you want a medal, he wants a medal.
But he was knighted. He's a knight.
He was knighted. He's a knight.
Yeah. So anyways,
cool.
We're excited for this season. We did start a Patreon. We started the Patreon. Last season, we did a Kickstarter, which thank you everybody who supported the show. It really helps to assemble a team who could produce these episodes week over week. Aaron and I have day jobs, and it's very, very busy. So we really need that support to be able to afford the time to get these guests lined up and to produce these episodes. So thank you for supporting us last year. This year, we're doing it as a Patreon because we realize we have all this extra stuff and we would love to put it somewhere. So it's going to go up on our Patreon. So if you'd like to support the show, head on over to our website, thefourthcurtain.com. And there's a link right at the top for finding our Patreon, and you can just join in and you'll get this episode a week early without ads. We're going to have Joe Staten on the show, and we talked to him for a while. Way too long, too much to fit into an episode. So there's a bunch of extra stuff that's going to go up there. So really appreciate your support.
So you just spoiled one person. So Joe Staten and anybody else you want to spoil? Like they were coming up?
Thank you for joining us for season 3. Thank you for joining us for this episode. And we know you're going to enjoy listening to Ian.
It's a good one.
Here he is. It's a good one. Welcome, listeners, to this week's edition of The Fourth Curtain. Today, we are so lucky to have with us one of gaming's favorite legends. I'm looking to see if I'm already embarrassing you, Ian. I know how humble you are. But with a resume going back 50 years to the founding of Games Workshop, Aaron,
yes,
did you bring
my room
Warhammer with you?
The decoration in my room. Oh, well, the whole room is decorated. I brought this guy that I painted.
Okay.
And I'm currently painting this guy.
I brought this guy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons in Europe.
Shrink wrap, still in its...
Oh my gosh, it's still in its shrink wrap.
1970.
That's amazing.
That's a mortgage payment right there.
If you're just listening, is that like a first edition box D&D?
It's not the first edition. The first one was wood grain in 1974. This is probably the third imprint in the white box. Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
All right. Well, so Ian has had probably I counted at least 4 different careers. Any one of them on their own would be pretty astounding. At Games Workshop, wrote the iconic fighting fantasy game books, as well as publishing White Dwarf, the gaming magazine, and as he just held up, brought D&D over to Europe. Went on to lead the formation of Eidos Interactive, served as executive chairman for many years. Eidos, of course, is where we get our Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Hitman.
Tomb Raider.
Some amazing games. And I know we were just talking about it, Ian. You and I got a chance to work together bringing Myth over to Europe while you were at Eidos. You were very kind to us. I very much remember our relationship as a big positive in my history in the game industry. He's been a very astute investor, including Playdemic, the makers of Golf Clash, which I was looking this up because when I was at EA, we bought Playdemic, but I think it maybe had already changed hands to Warner Brothers at some point.
Yeah, we probably sold the company a little prematurely, some might say. We didn't actually have to put any working capital into the company at all, and that's why we sold it, which was ironic because it generated so much cash. It wasn't necessary. Yeah. So Warner's had the benefit of all the upside of Golf Clash, and then sold it to Electronic Arts.
Well, that's
not too long after, for some $1.3 billion, I believe, and it's still a game. We launched it in 2017. Yeah. But I was just chairman, one of the founder investors in the company. But Paul Googe and Alex Rigby, who were responsible for creating the game, I'd known Paul when he was at Eidos for a brief period, and I said, "Wherever you go, my money's going to follow you." So I invested in his company, and they did amazing things.
It's incredible. And that's not all. I mean, Mediatonic also on that list, makers of Fall Guys. I believe Epic acquired them at some point.
Yeah.
and we are building. Aaron and I have a studio building inside of Fortnite, and we work alongside some of that content even today. So very enduring. Founding partner of Hero Capital, and a fourth career, which I don't know as much about, but I've read a bunch about, is all the nonprofit work that you do. You're a patron to numerous nonprofits. Has pushed forward education initiatives in the UK, which is really impressive. And in 2022, I believe you were knighted. So you're Sir Ian Livingstone.
You're a knight, dude.
Yes.
And, that's awesome.
And you're still publishing
the
books.
horse is outside.
Show us the sword.
Oh, my goodness. I don't know how you squeeze all that into one career, and it's still going. What an honor to have you with us, Ian. So great to see you. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
How are you?
Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. I mean, for me, life is a game. I've just enjoyed every minute of it. Just games help define us who we are as human beings, and it was my passion as a child, and I've been able to forge a lifelong career from it, and I'm never going to retire. The people in it are amazing. The concepts that created is amazing, and obviously games goes way beyond just entertainment. It does teach us life skills, and it allows you to learn in an enjoyable manner. I mean, talking about video games, the way they're all about problem solving, intuitive learning, creativity. Games like Minecraft, a child can learn contextually by applying the heat of a furnace to silica sand. They can make glass, and they put that glass in their environment. I think that's learning by doing is often missing in education, and it's the application of knowledge which appealed to me. I mean, I was useless at school. I didn't go to university because I couldn't contextualize. I couldn't just learn stuff for the sake of learning it without any application of it. But games, I think, have been misunderstood for far too long. But I'm delighted to say they're almost on the verge of becoming socially acceptable, which is amazing. So.
Well,
a long way.
It's so great to hear you say that and articulate it that way. I have totally thought that myself. Games go back. I remember I was in a presentation or something, and somebody was sharing the following with me, which I had never heard before. But the Egyptian game, I think it's called Senet, which I think is similar to Mancala, which I think might have been the first game you ever sold because you sent me a copy of that purchase order. Yeah. But that game, Senet, they would uncover copies of it, or artifacts of it in the ruins of the pyramids, etc., that predate the hieroglyphics, which means that people were relating to each other through play before they were writing their language down, which is speaks to just how fundamental the idea of play is. So it's really, really good to hear you articulate it so well. And kind of curious, is that your dog?
Was that your dog?
Yeah,
no, my dog's asleep.
The dog's just getting my horse.
That's hilarious. What's your dog's name?
Well, we've got 3 dogs. We've got all named by my children. That's why they're a bit odd named. But Pedro, Lola, and Bunny.
Okay, right on.
Pedro's a great
name. Doesn't need any excuse to bark.
Okay, I'm definitely a dog person, so can appreciate and relate. But like when you were coming up in the UK, and so like you said, you didn't go to university, but you're in the UK. You go through high school through 17, 18 years old, I'm guessing. What was? I mean, there wasn't really much video game stuff at the time, I'm guessing, but was this the
we didn't even have color TVs. What are you talking about?
Okay, no color TV. Okay, so for the kids, I mean, how did the kids relate to that environment? Like, what were you doing for fun?
We were playing traditional family board games because there weren't any hobby games. So at school, I'm 75 now, so ancient, but so I was at school in the 1950s and 60s. And so it was games like chess and Monopoly and Clue and just straight ordinary family games, but I still enjoyed those. But I wanted more, and had the opportunity, having left school, went to college and played cards, enjoyed that. But it wasn't until we got discovering in the late 60s games like Diplomacy and some of the Avalon Hill games that we've heard about and found some in London, strangely, and SPI games. I thought, oh, wow, there is more to life than rolling a dice and moving a counter around the board and doing whatever the random occurrences bestow upon me. So it was great to discover those. And I started playing a lot of Diplomacy in the late 60s and early 70s. I was doing a magazine for Don Turnbull called Albion. It was a play-by-mail game magazine. And then moved to London. I'd met Steve Jackson and John Peake at school. We all went our separate ways. They both went to university. I didn't. But anyway, we met up in London and we shared a flat. We all had pretty boring jobs, but we stayed in to save money and started playing games that we'd heard about. And one that that Steve had found at university was called The Warlord, which was one of his most beloved games, which we used to play forever. By a Sheffield University lecturer, and we ended up publishing it years later as Apocalypse, for one of the first board games that Games Workshop produced. But how we got into games as a business was quite fortuitous. We talked about doing something in games to create a games community. We weren't really thinking about a company as such. And this was during the late 1974. And we thought, let's set out and send out a newsletter to note anybody we knew. And Don Turnbull had given us his mailing list of 50 subscribers to Albion. And
50.
Yeah, 50.
Okay.
The games industry wasn't very big in 1970. And so we put out our little newsletter called Owl and Weasel and sent it out to everybody who knew in games, and free, thanks to my marketing training. And somehow a copy had found its way to Bryen Bloom. And I realized now that Bryen Bloom was on the subscriber list of the Albion. And Bryen Bloom was Gary Gygax's business partner at the time.
Okay.
And we were sent
the guys that started TSR and made Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, and we were sent a copy of D&D and played it. And Steve and I were immediately obsessed by it. John, who was a civil engineer by trade, but was making the wooden games that we started selling at the beginning of 75. He thought he didn't think anything about role-playing games and thought it was pretty boring. He wanted more traditional games. Anyway, Steve and I's obsession kind of ruled, and we all agreed that we should order some copies of D&D. And the money we had when we put it on the table amounted for enough for us to buy 6 copies. And on the back, so we wrote our order, and on the back of that huge order, we got a 3-year exclusive distribution agreement for the whole of Europe.
Yeah, that's awesome.
for six copies.
6 copies. Yeah,
like
because
a very astute investor, business person.
Gary Gygax, the co-designer of D&D, he was obviously operating in a very shoestring operation as well, underfunded hobby business. I think they'd only printed 1,000 copies. And so he was delighted to have a European distributor, even though we were kind of a role-playing businessman about a role-playing game. It was quite bizarre, really. We were pretending to be these big shots in the UK, rather than it was actually awful run-down apartment in Shepherd's Bush on the 3rd floor in London. So we got our copies and we started selling it through Owl and Weasel. And we decided we had to call the company a name. So we called it Games Workshop because John's bedroom was a workshop. It was full of wood shavings and chippings and sawdust because he was making all the wooden games at the time. And I was out selling them to shops. And in fact, today is the 50th anniversary of when we got our first order from Just Games for 6 of his Mancala boards. And Steve would be doing the admin and some work for a Games and Puzzles magazine. And on a Saturday when we weren't in our jobs, we'd see people milling around on the street outside looking for a shop, which because they could see they had a copy of Owl and Weasel in their hands. used to open the window. You want Games Workshop? Up here, mate. And they used to come up the stairs. Of course, there's no mobile phones then. We didn't have a phone in our apartment, but there's a public payphone on the ground floor, which we shared with our landlord. And when the phone would ring, when we happened to be in, and we knew it'd be a telephone sale for Dungeons and Dragons or something, and raced down the stairs, or it was too late. Paddy, our landlord, was there first on a Friday. He maybe had a beer too many. Not very happy because it's hello, you on Games Workshop, do you? Go to hell just to have
Oh my God.
That just makes people even more determined to find this shop. So anyway, people would come up the stairs and kind of be a bit bemused that they're stepping into this dump with a few board games stuck on a shelf, but they'd go away happy that they'd found Mecca in their own eyes. So This went on for quite a long time, this sort of part-time semi-business thing, until 1976, when things started to firm up a little bit, and Steve and I decided to go full-time, but John decided to opt out at that point, and thus we went to the States in June 1976 to attend Gen Con 9 and meet Gary Gygax and all the new games companies that were appearing at the time. And we signed them up. We said, hey, we're the British distributors of Dungeons and Dragons, and we need to distribute your product. So we signed up everybody because there's nobody else doing it. Little did they know we had no money, no apartment because we'd moved out of our apartment, and actually nowhere to live. So we had to, the postal address we gave was my girlfriend's address at the time. So she had all these parcels arriving. She wasn't very amused about that. So we came back to the UK 3 months later because we'd spent 2 months getting to Gen Con. We decided to do the whole Route 66 thing. So we got to New York, we drove over to Los Angeles and delivering cars, and then up to San Francisco, and then over back to Chicago, and eventually to Gen Con. And just made an amazing holiday out of it. Anyway, we got back to the UK, no money, nowhere to live, so staying at my girlfriend's place. So he goes to the bank manager and said, hello, we've got this great game. It's a role-playing game called Dungeons and Dragons, and you're a hero and a wizard, and you find these fantastic journeys of the mind, exploring the dungeon masters' dungeons and killing monsters, and it goes on for weeks and stuff. And he's looking at us like a dog watching television. His eyes kind of he looks almost panicking that we're talking about.
Yeah, and you're asking him for money, right? You're like,
Can we have $10,000, please? And anyway, the door was shown to us quite quickly. And I guess it took me quite a few years. We were angry at the time, but we were hardly what you call investor ready. We had no investment deck, no cash flows, no projections, no premises, nothing other than our enthusiasm. So we had to, in fact, live in Steve's van for 3 months, which we parked outside a squash club, which we joined, so we could have a shower in the morning. Got really good at squash by default. And
did you get good at squash?
Yeah, pretty good. We were playing it.
Upside. You're literally, you guys were living out of a van.
Yes. And then because we'd hired a small office at the back of this estate agent. It's the size, I don't know, if a customer came in, one of us had to go out because it was so small. And so we ran this sort of very small triangular life of doing mail orders from 10 in the morning till like midnight, and then into the stinky van. It was winter, they were raining, and we were living the dream, as they say. And then up in the morning for the game of squash and a shower, etc. So it was good, but it was better than doing a proper job, because we were just massive games enthusiasts. And to think that you were building a games company then, even though it was a nightmare looking back, it was just so inspiring to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's like the definition of hustle right there. Did you have any idea, like when you were doing this triangular life in the van, on the squash court, in the office that only fit 2 people, that it would go somewhere, that it could actually become a publicly traded company that was big? No.
You joking?
You're like, well, this is fun.
No
I just
money.
wanted to keep being fun.
Yeah, it was good. We only figured it out when we opened our first store.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what was the turning point event? That was it? Like opening up a retail shop?
I would say there was three things that made us suddenly believe. One, we started to think that Alan Weasel wasn't up to scratch. It was a fanzine, instant printing, A5 size, not very professional at all. And we'd seen the Dragon come out and thought, we're off the pace here. We need to up our game, no pun intended. So we produced the first issue of White Dwarf in June 1977. And that was a huge risk. We put all the money we'd saved in the print run of 4,000 copies we had to do. And at the time, Alan Weasel had a circulation of 200 copies. So we had to get it into retail and really promote it as hard as we could. But it sold out. So
awesome.
So you suddenly think, oh, wow, we can sell 4,000 copies of a magazine. That's amazing. And by which time, we had quite a large product range, not just TSR, D&D and all their stuff, but all the supplements like from Judges Guild and, City State of the Invincible Overlord. And then we got Games Designers Workshop, Chaosium, Metagaming, Steve Jackson Games and others. We were starting to represent all the big American hobby games companies, which was amazing. And then we started importing Asgard miniatures, Ralpatha miniatures and a couple of others, but it was very expensive, slow to import metal figures from the US. So we started ordering some from the UK company, Asgard Miniatures, and we met Bryen Ansell, who was one of the partners in the business, and he was saying, how come you're buying so many giant rats from us? I said, and how come you're buying so many some hellhounds from us? And they said, well, this is what people want in Dungeons and Dragons fix. So he said, where are you getting your others from? I said, well, again, from the USA. He says, I can be your miniature solution. Let's start a company together. So on the spot, we agreed almost for him to leave Asgard or fold it into Workshop and create Newco Citadel Miniatures, of which which was owned by Games Workshop. And thus how Citadel started in 78. But it was up in Nottingham where he was living in 1970. And then in April 78, our landlords, the estate agents, were so fed up of people coming in and their backyard being full of boxes. They said, you're going to have to leave. Said, well, your estate agent finds a shop. And the reason why we wanted to open our first store was because I tried to sell all this stuff into other retailers, but they couldn't get their head around all the supplements and miniatures and magazines and paints and stuff that you need. They just wanted a box, like a family games box where you put on the shelf, and if somebody wants it, it's over there, mate. And so they didn't want to have any knowledge and stuff. So it was very slow getting it into retail. So let's open our own store. So that's how the first store opened in Hammersmith in West London in April 1978. And I think that the turning point for us is that was a huge line outside for the opening day. And I've got a photo of that, which I put in Diceman. So
that book
I wrote about the origin story of Workshop. And so there's all those. That was a big turning point. And I remember saying to Steve, I think we're onto something here. And it became more of a serious business with, we've got retail store and Dungeons and Dragons, and we had all these American role-playing games and Citadel and White Dwarf, and things were really starting to fly. We were hiring people then, and it started to take off.
Wow.
Is that store still around? The original one?
It's now a rather ugly set of flat apartments, and okay. I can send you a photo. You won't.
No, it's too bad.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah.
So in this time frame, you were also writing books, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Because this was 78, and there's a couple of other big events happened before the book started. In 79, Gygax, we had a conversation with Gary Gygax, who reminded us that our exclusive distribution agreement was for 3 years only, and we're now entering into the 4th year. And he said, "You've done a great job, guys. I want to merge TSR with Games Workshop." We said, "What?" But we're young and we're British and we're independent. And we don't want to spend half our lives, traveling across the big pond. So we said no. We said, "Are you sure?"
I think that was a good call, right? That was a good call.
Well, it turned out as a good call. I'm not sure it was a great call at the time because we were suddenly very vulnerable. We were the exclusive distributors, and then suddenly we were not going to be. So he said, because we got on really well, he said, "Look, we're going to have to open our own TSR hub UK if you don't do this." So we said, "So be it." But as it happened, even though they did, and ironically, it was run by Don Turnbull, who'd run Albion magazine, who I used to do covers for, and I'd introduced him to Gygax. And so Gygax gave him a job. Thanks. So we remained the biggest distributor of D&D, and theirs was almost a parcel forwarding agency because all the retailers were getting not just D&D from us, but everything else. So they came to us because we were a one-stop shop. But there ended up being them in the picture. So it didn't really hurt us too much. Perhaps our margin got trimmed a bit, but it was still we were still very secure in the knowledge that everybody still came to us for D&D. But also, there was a bit of a split because we'd also, AD&D was now around, the Monster Manual, DM's Guide had come out, and I suggested to Gary that we put together a sequel to the Monster Manual because it'd done so well, and we'd had literally hundreds of monsters that we'd published in White Dwarf under the Fiend Factory heading. He said, "Yeah, great idea, because we're so busy, do it." But and we got Don Turnbull to edit it as well. But when we turned down this merger operation, it all got a bit messy. And when it finally came out, long story short, you wouldn't have known we'd had anything to do with it. All our names had kind of been struck out apart from being credited with the monster at the back. So there was no reference to White Dwarf or anything. So that rankled a bit, but we still got our royalty checks. But it was delayed by 2 years to 1981 when it finally came out. But so then we would realize that we're kind of a little bit vulnerable, not being exclusive anymore, that you realize, and it served me through my whole career, how valuable IP ownership is for determining your own destiny and obviously adding more value to the company because you get the value not just from publishing an IP yourself, but all the incremental revenue from licensing and merchandising and whatever comes with all the from all those incremental revenues from those licenses. And so we started publishing board games that we created ourselves or got the rights for. Some of the early ones were Apocalypse, this great war game that was based on the Warlord, a Doctor Who game. What else? One called Warlock and Valley of the Four Winds. And then we started publishing RuneQuest under license. But we realized we needed a big hitter, something to replace D&D. And that came about in the form of Warhammer. But that wasn't until 1983. And Warhammer was amazing in that Bryen had said that, look, I'm kind of fed up with just selling one of everything, one giant rat, one ghoul, one vampire. I want to sell units, regiments of miniatures, because that's much more cost effective to sell 20 of something rather than one of something. So he'd had a set of rules, Laserburn, that he'd written, and he had this idea for this tabletop battle with the miniatures that we were making at Citadel. And the idea was originally to give it away with the mail orders, kind of 2 pages of tabletop skirmish battles. But other people at Citadel thought, no, this could be expanded into a product. And so he brought in Richard Halliwell and Rick Priestley to expand those rules into a box format, which was Warhammer Fantasy Battle, that came out in 1983, and that sold out almost instantly, 3,000 copies. So another version was done, the red box version. And then ultimately, of course, Fantasy Roleplay and the Opus Magnus Warhammer 40,000 in 1987. And suddenly we're off to the races. We had our new IP, and as we all know how amazing Warhammer's become over time. But getting back to what you were saying about the writing, that happened as a result of Games Day in 1979. We used to run these annual things called Games Day, where literally thousands of people come and play all the games that we were involved with and some that we weren't involved with. And at 79, Penguin Books had a booth there, and the editor, Geraldine Cook, came over to Steve and I and said, what is this going on? What are these people doing? Why are they so passionate about talking to each other about going down dungeons and things? And we said, well, this is a role-playing game. You take on this persona, and this is your alter ego going on these fantastic journeys of the mind, and you're living in a different world being heroic. And I said, it's amazing. And she says, well, could you write a book about this hobby? And we said, well, rather than writing a book about the hobby, why don't we write a book that allows you to experience a hobby without knowing what the hell we were talking about? So she said, great, send in a synopsis. So we thought, oh, what have we done? So we went back and started thinking about this and thought, how can we take the essence of a role-playing game and put it into book format? So replace the Dungeon Master with a book and do a branching narrative, number paragraphs, 400 wasn't how we started thinking we were doing, but we thought, it needed hundreds of choices to make it meaningful. And also attach a simple game system, a simple role-playing system with just 3 attributes: skill, stamina, and luck, and using dice for encountering monsters or events. And so we sent this in as a synopsis for what became Fighting Fantasy. And she thought this was amazing. So she took it to the managing director of Penguin Books, who apparently laughed so hard he banged his head on the table that the idea of an interactive book would ever have any appeal, and said, you must be mad. Don't show me this again. But Geraldine was a real trooper, and I'm still in touch with her today, and she was fantastic, and she fought our corner. Ultimately, she got rejected like 10 times by Penguin within the year. But then she showed it to the children's imprint, Puffin Books, and the editor there said, this sounds great. Let's do it. So she phoned us up and said, we've got a result here. Can you write this book in 3 months? Because we need it out by August. And what? So we started writing. So I wrote the first half and Steve wrote the second half of what was known as the Warlock of Firetop Mountain. And that was our very first Fighting Fantasy game book. And it came out in August 1982 without much fanfare. The Penguin reps didn't know what the hell it was. It didn't make sense if you read sequentially, so it was like gobbledygook.
Right, yeah.
And it looked like a normal book. But then we talked about it in White Dwarf magazine, and we also got invited to be on BBC Radio 1, which is the largest broadcasting radio channel, just because somebody had heard about it who was into games. And we started playing the book over the radio by reading out the choices, and the people would phone in and make those choices. So
that's cool.
Going down a 20-foot wide passageway, you come to a doorway with a keep outside and written in blood on it, and you look further down the corridor, there's a skeleton appearing from a green mist, armed with 2 swords. What do you want to do? If you want to open the door, or do you want to carry on looking towards the skeleton? And they would argue, something the readers, the listeners phoning in would argue, and then they'd make a choice, and it unfolded, and it became... It got enough imagination to start being adopted in schools, and then one school would do it, and then another school would do it, and then it would connect, and that became the virality of the day, was the playground word of mouth, and suddenly all the schools in the country got joined up and became a craze. And so, but the Penguin still didn't understand it. They reprinted like 11 times in the first 2 months until Geraldine came on the phone and said, they believe. And you write 2 more. So then
it's always that way when you invent something new that people haven't seen before, right? It's like, I don't understand what this is, but then, it took off. So, those books have sold what, like 20 million copies or something?
Over 20 million copies. Yeah.
That's insane.
Incredible.
So we did them, but they were criticized at the time. Like a part of the satanic panic, because there's ghouls and demons in the books, and that you're interacting with these books. The Evangelical Alliance, I think, published an 8-page warning guide saying, because you're reading these books, you're just bound to get possessed by the devil. And a housewife in deepest suburbia phoned up a local radio station and said, having read one of my books, a child levitated.
What?
all the kids listening thought, what? For $2 I can fly?
Yeah. Sign me up.
I'll have some of that. But in time, when people understood that they were quite harmless, and this was just children's imaginations being inspired, they started to write good things, and teachers were actually already in the know. They started saying, well, they were great for reluctant readers, they were great for critical thinking, they were great for literacy, they were great for numeracy, they were great for encouraging people to write their own branching narratives, and from being wanted to be banned by some parents, suddenly the parents were buying them by droves because they realized that they got a whole generation of children reading in the 1980s. It was that empowerment, the giving agency to children, because it moved from a passive experience, which a lot of children didn't enjoy, to an interactive experience, giving them that power to make decisions and to be successful but through that decision making. So ultimately they became a global success and published in over 30 countries in 25 languages. And they were published by Dell in the States. They didn't do the best job, I'm afraid, but I'm delighted to say they will be appearing in 2025 through Steve Jackson Games, who's republishing the whole series. And then, So
the American Steve Jackson.
There are 2 Steve Jacksons.
Yeah. How fascinating is that? And this I didn't realize until I just started, clicking on links in Wikipedia and stuff, that the 2 you're Steve Jackson and Texas Steve Jackson and Steve Jackson Games, they're not the same person.
They're clones.
Steve Jackson US is going to be publishing Steve Jackson UK Games.
That's cool. They're re-releasing them. Like there's going to be like a special whole thing, like box sets and everything, or.
Well, I'm hoping there's going to be box sets, but there's going to be 10 published towards the end of this year. Yeah.
I love that really idea cool. That not the idea, but the story you're telling about how it was basically like performative on the radio with a call-in. You just think about like what the world was like in the 70s and 80s, pre-internet. You talk about virality on the playground. It's so different today. Like my kids' experience coming up is so different than our experience when we were coming up. But that idea that you could have the almost like dungeon master experience, the curated experience through a book, through a call-in show on the radio, I think is so cool. You should do like a YouTube version of it where
like
a live version.
Live version.
It's like funny doing it live as well. I do it occasionally. I do it at UK Games Expo. I do a live one and usually let the audience decide. I used to go to schools and do them. It was amazing because the children always wanted to go for the worst choices. That was going to get them terrible.
Do you want to jump in the chasm, or do you want to put on your armor?
You're in this room. There are 2 statues. One is covered in gold and is smiling at you and has got its hand out, and there's a silver piece on the palm of his hand. On the second one, there's looks cold. It's got ice, and there's gas vapors coming from its nose, and it starts to whisper that if you touch it, it'll reach into through your ribs and pull your heart out. What do you want to do? Touch the ice statue. Your heart is about to be ripped out of your ribcage. Are you sure? Yeah. On the left, you can have some silver and gold pieces for free. Are you sure you want? Take the.
What are you playing now? Do you play games now? Fails. Like, what are you into these days? Like, are you playing any board games or anything?
In this room, there's 15.
I thought it was wallpaper.
Yeah. If you're just listening and can't see, Ian has. I mean, how many games are on that shelf? You said it was like 100.
Well, in the room, you can only see a bit of two of the shelves, of which there are 1,500 board games, hundreds of video games, and all the artwork from the covers of my books from the years gone by. So it is it's the ultimate geek room, I think. But yes, we do play games. I've been running the Games Night Club since 1986. We started with 6 people, we're now down to 5. And I've been doing a newsletter. We're on issue 671 of the Games Night newsletter. Has a circulation of 5. There are 5 subscribers. They're mostly happy. So we keep a record of every game played. Steve Jackson's in the group. Peter Molyneux, the video games designers, in the group, and 2 of the non-industry people. And for every game played, there are points allocated. And at the end of the year, there's a cup presented to the winner in a very formal way as a gentleman's club should behave itself. But clearly, we're anything but gentlemen.
Yes, that cup is filled with something to drink, I'm guessing.
So 1986, we've been running the Games Night Club. So we meet as often as we can face to face, and we play regularly every week using Board Game Arena to play the board games.
Oh, right on.
And have a Zoom window open to insult each other with.
Excellent.
Cool.
Excellent. Okay, so we're still kind of on career number 1 here. How did you discover?
We moved into fighting fantasy.
Okay. Yes. Fair enough. Fair enough. But video games. How did you discover video games? How did they come on your radar, etc.?
Well, I think the first games, I had a Commodore PET, all 8K of glory. Used to play games on that. I had an Intellivision.
I think I have. That's it, right? The Commodore PET.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it. I have this. My brother gave me this book about all these old vintage computers. My middle school had the same computer. That was the first computer I used.
Yeah, we used to do our accounts on it. It was somewhat lacking to compare to today's computers, but for the time it was very exciting. And we played on Intellivision. There was even a D&D game on Intellivision. We used to play baseball on that as well. You're out.
Was that Don Daglow? Was that Don Daglow's baseball game on the Intellivision?
Was that Don Daglow? I can't remember who it was.
I think he worked on Intellivision.
Yeah, he might have.
Sure, he did a baseball game there.
He brought it up.
So
okay,
I was
you were in Intellivision.
I was a player before I got involved as an operator, and how that came about was in 1984 when my Fighting Fantasy game book Death Trap Dungeon was in number 1 in the charts. In fact, that's another little funny story, because I had number 1, 2, and 3 in the children's bestsellers list, and I was invited to go into national TV to talk about the top 10 of games. And there was a presenter called John Craven who was a bit sort of prejudiced in his opinions of what books should be, shall we say. And so we started at number 10, went all the way through up, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. I had to talk about each one. And we got to 3, 2, 1. He says, "Oh, these are all your books, aren't they?" And I said, "Yes, they are." He says, "When are you going to write a proper book?" And I said, "Well, these books are getting children reading, and they can read Shakespeare as and when they're ready for it. But if you get them to love reading, surely that's a good thing." But he struggled to understand the concept of of an interactive book. And then that's always been the problem with games, isn't it? Because we called it a Fighting Fantasy game book, it suddenly becomes trivialized as having anything of value and worth. And the whole game industry, not so much, of course, these days, but in the early days of the games industry, everything was viewed with suspicion that you should stop playing games once you got to a certain age, and they're probably going to be harmful or addictive and stuff. Never talking about the benefits of the power of play and help defining who we are as human beings, the social aspect, the learning aspects, and the playful aspects. I mean, when we arrive in this world as babies, we learn immediately through play. Anyway, I digress. So getting back to how I got into video games, Death Trap Dungeon was number one in the charts, and I was approached by a startup games company called Domark, who asked me if I would write their first game for them. And they had an idea for a game where they offered a £25,000 prize, some $30,000, for the first person to solve it. And I said, sure, I'll do it. So I did the concept of traveling through time as a game was called Eureka. And it was an incredible achievement. It was programmed in Hungary for secrecy. So, because there was obviously clues in the code that you could find to end up with what would be a phone number, which would ended up, you dialed it, would be on a recording machine in a solicitor's office. And if you give your name, you'd win this amount of money, the first person to do so. So some of the clues were in the rule book, some were in the game itself. And it was very successful. And when Steve and I sold out of Games Workshop in 1991, I should preface that as well, that rather than taking royalties, I took equity in Domark. So that's how they gave me a stepping stone.
So another astute move, I'm guessing, on your part here.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't at the time, because in 1991, when we sold out of Workshop, I put some more money into Domark and joined the board as vice chairman. And it was then this was 1993 when I joined the company, and not long after, the 16-bit market fell off the edge of a cliff, and suddenly Domark found itself undercapitalized, making the wrong games for the wrong format before the 32-bit machines came into being. So we decided to put 4 companies together, recapitalize it, and we put 3 game studios and a technology company, IDOS Technologies, into one company, and I became the executive chairman. We floated that company on the London Stock Exchange, and suddenly we were a PLC and with capital. But our big deal happened in March '96, when Centergold, the only other listed company in the space, was having difficulties. Had maxed out its headroom of getting any more bank finance, and the market had lost faith, and share price was plummeting. So even though we were way bigger than us, we made an audacious offer to acquire them. And we did it. And part of that due diligence period in March '96 was, quite a big moment, being the games guy on the PLC board of IDOS. It was my job to do all the due diligence on the studios and the content. And I visited some of their studios, and it was snowing at the time, and drove over all the way to Derby and to be met by Jeremy Smith, who was managing director of Core Design. And he showed me around the studio. Core Design was owned by Centergold. And by the way, Centergold historically published USA games under license under their US Gold brand. But they also had their own company-owned studios in the UK. So went round Core Design, looked at all the games, looked okay. But in the very last room, there was this 3D character, female, jumping around the screen, and it was in 3D. It wasn't a 2D side-scrolling game. This character was actually moving into the screen, and it looked incredible. The camera could follow her, and the environments looked amazing, and the technology looked amazing. And I said, "What's this?" It said, "It's Tomb Raider."
We'll be right back. If you like what you're hearing, like and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And now, a word from our sponsors. Great games aren't just made, they're crafted. Pixel by pixel, idea by idea. Amber doesn't just develop games, Amber forges the future of play, one project at a time. From the magic makers at Disney to the tech giants at Amazon and Warner Media, the biggest names in the industry trust Amber to turn their wildest ideas into reality. Why? Because the talented teams at Amber believe in pushing every boundary, breaking every mold, and having a bit of fun while they're at it. Need a partner who knows the game and plays to win? Amber has the talent, the passion, and a global network that's ready to roll. So let's skip the loading screen and get straight to the action. Discover how Amber can power up your next project at amberstudio.com. Do you want your game to live forever? To supercharge it with immense powers of endless content, a buzzing gamer community, immortality, and coin? CurseForge for Studios, an exclusive service for visionary game developers, allows you to add safe, cross-platform mods to your game and enjoy all the benefits of user-generated content without any of the risks. With CurseForge for Studios, you can harness the creativity of our 165,000 devoted creators and the traffic of 43 million monthly gamers. You can also level up with premium mods and grant your game new revenue streams. Trusted by AAA studios, CurseForge for Studios is an immortality potion for your game. Enter studios.curseforge.com and join the UGC era. Leveling up your game dev career but not sure where to start?
Maybe you're trying to break into the industry, looking to connect with other people who are making games.
Consider joining the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA, the world's largest nonprofit, member-driven professional association serving all individuals who create games.
I was in the IGDA in Chicago, met a lot of people. Great way to network.
The IGDA exists to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers.
Discounts,
educational and advocacy-based resources,
mentorship,
and solidarity across 160-plus chapters.
To join the IGDA, visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15, no spaces there,
to get 15% off 1- and 2-year memberships, as well as a student membership.
Joining the IGDA is a great move for your career, and as a nonprofit supporting everyone making games, it's a great move for the whole community. Join today. Hey listeners, it's Alex from the 4th Curtain.
And Darren here. We want to give a quick shout out to the team at High Vibe PR.
High Vibe PR is our boutique communications firm. They're all about companies and brands defining the future of gaming, entertainment, and culture.
Look, when you're doing something big, you need the right people to help you tell your story. And High Vibe PR, they're the best at making it happen.
Absolutely. They've helped us at Look North World level up our messaging, connect to the right audiences, and stay ahead of the curve in this ever-changing industry.
So, if you're looking for a PR partner who gets gaming and entertainment like no one else, check them out at highvibepr.com.
That's highvibepr.com. Go give them a look. You won't regret it.
And now, back to the show.
So I thought, wow, it's just a small team, 6 people. So I drove back to London that day and phoned up our CEO and said, we need to buy this company. Not so much for Sentinel, but for what these guys at Core Design are doing in this game called Tomb Raider. And but nobody knew then how big it was going to be. And so we acquired Center Gold, and we published Tomb Raider in October the same year. And I think we had like 70,000 units in the budget or something, and obviously sold over time 7 million units of the first one.
That's pretty good.
And the rest of the say is history. It was the birth of the success of IDOS. And then the whole IP thing I was talking about, owning Warhammer, and then we applied that as well. So hence games like Hitman and Deus Ex and Just Cause and Championship Manager were all IPs that we owned rather than licensing film or comic book IP.
Oh, I forgot Just Cause. That's right. That's you guys published that too. Okay, well, so Tomb Raider, that period of time when it came out, and you said that was 96? 96. I very much remember those, I don't know if it was that year or like a couple of years. but the game came out super popular. It breached pop culture.
Yeah.
Like I think there was a party at the Electronic Entertainment Expo that U2 came and played at. Is that right? Am I remembering that right?
U2 used her in the backdrop, but we did hold parties with Third Eye Blind, was it, and others.
Okay.
But she did become a mass media entertainment phenomenon. Even the government embraced her for part of what's called the Cool Britannia instead of Rule Britannia thing. I'm not trying to make the UK cool again. Although it's always she was part of the Cool Britannia, but she did adorn the cover of the Face magazine, the first ever non-real human.
Oh, I remember that.
On the cover of the Face.
Yeah.
There was merchandise, unbelievable amounts of merchandise made on the back of Lara Croft Tomb Raider. Of course, last but not least, the 2 Tomb Raider movies, and starring Angelina Jolie, who was the perfect person at the time. Not only she was just amazing in every facet, fantastic actress, athletic, and in fact reflecting the character of Lara Croft being strong, independent, intelligent, athletic, and adventurous. And Lara appealed to everybody, young and old, male and female. I think 40% of the players were female at the time, and it was the 3 pillars of adventuring, combat, and puzzle solving seemed to appeal to everybody. And it was a milestone in gaming history. In fact, that one of the very first characters with a 3D character moving to 3D world, and of course one of the very first, if not the first, female character in a game. So it was great, amazing to be part of that, guiding her through her life for a certain period of time. And of course, she survived the test of time, like James Bond survived the test of time in film.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you what that's like. Like, you were intimately involved, obviously, the formation of Games Workshop and the IP that was created there, including Warhammer, and then similarly at Eidos and Lara Croft, and those characters and IPs still exist and are growing, and they've kind of maybe changed hands or not changed hands, but they've kind of evolved and they've had a life as you've gone on and done other things. So do you look at those as how do you like, what does that make you feel? It's like for me, because I left Bungie 2 beats ago in my career, and maybe a couple of years ago, I'm taking my daughter somewhere across the 101, and we look over and there's a giant billboard for the Halo TV show. The Master Chief is kind of like sitting there looking at me drive down the highway, and can't help but have feels.
It's amazing. I mean, I feel probably like yourself, like a proud parent watching on. Your child's left home and become far more successful than I ever have imagined. And so, a great sense of pride. No regrets. Clearly, some might say we sold a little early, considering Games Workshop's now recently entered the FTSE 100, which means its market cap is around about $5 billion. But it's extraordinary considering we're living in a van to start it all off.
Yeah. But that's everything's got to start somewhere, It's it's incredible. So Lara Croft blows up, Tomb Raider, super huge, and then Ion Storm is started, and Deus Ex comes out. There's lots of other things happening around that, but then also Just Cause, Hitman. The company at Eidos has a what was it like? Was it like?
It was very exciting. I mean, huge growth. Became kind of the darling of the city for some time as the share price continued to rise. It went market cap raised from like £10 million to nearly £1 billion in quite a short order, and then came down, not quite as fast as it gone up, but it did come down because we'd done, I don't want to get into the monetary talks too much, but we had a NASDAQ listing which involved quarterly reporting. And in those days when you were making physical media, which was a locked in product, you couldn't change it like you can with games as a service now. If it wasn't ready and you put it out, you'd kind of get punished. Mm-hmm. And the market was expecting a certain amount of revenue, and we were saying, well, we should delay this because it's not ready. It's an ethereal process. You're writing millions of lines of code. We started 2 years previously, and if it's not ready, it's just not ready. But the market thinks it has to be ready because you said so. Therefore, you should put it out there. You're going to miss your numbers and have to issue a profit warning. So there was definitely a misunderstanding or a non-understanding by the city of how a video games company operates.
Yeah. I think the market still is learning.
A little bit. They're better now. And then if it wasn't the game you were hoping it to be, because it was physical inventory, it'd come off the shelves and back to you, impacting cash flow and profitability. And ultimately, Eidos got itself into a bit of a state, and we ended up being acquired and ultimately bought by Square Enix of Japan. And and then therefore I left not too much longer after, because even though I was emotionally tied to the company, that wasn't for me. Still had my fiercely independence of all those years ago, running workshop and saying no to mergers. But then I didn't really want to start another company off. I was now in my late 50s, so then became an angel investor. So I could put my finger in everybody else's pie and help me. and do the same a lot more now with Hero Capital, because we've raised a lot of money, and I can put into multiple pies, and hopefully after 50 years of pattern recognition, I can have an idea of what good looks like and help them not make the same mistakes we made all those years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like you have a really good eye. You have a good eye for things that appeal. Tell me if this is correct. You look at something, you could tell if it appeals to you, and you could extrapolate that it could appeal to a lot of people. And that's kind of like your razor. You're not like looking at a spreadsheet. You're not like, you're actually like, I would like to play this thing, or like this thing should exist because it's cool.
Yeah.
And that's a primary, like you went and saw the prototype of Tomb Raider, and immediately you're like, this is special.
Well, when people ask me what are the three most important things about a game, I say gameplay, gameplay, gameplay. Technology, whilst vital, plays a supporting role. Graphics, though vital, plays a supporting role to the gameplay. You don't buy a game because it looks pretty. You buy it because it plays wonderfully. You don't care if it looks terrible. If you're having great fun, that's irrelevant, and you can conjure up your own imagery in your mind. But if you just have a load of pretty pictures and it's boring to play, why bother? And making it longer doesn't make it any better. You don't go into a movie and say, terrible film that at least lasted 5 hours, do you? I mean,
good point.
Actually, I did that once. No, I'm just kidding.
But I got to imagine that perspective, I mean, as common sense as that sounds, that's not everybody's point of view, but like that way of operating, I got to imagine is a big reason why you can be successful as not just an operator of one company after another, but an investor.
I love games. I play games all the time. And so I'm in this games cave here. And so the most important is the gameplay itself. And I can get people to look at the numbers and see if it works from a numbers point of view. But I'm investing in people. And when I invest in studios, I have to make sure that the creative director has an equal footing of influence with the managing director, and they can enable each other to do well. I mean, case in point was Playdemic and Mediatonic, where if you have a bean counter, a finance person running a games company, they're going to make what was popular last year rather than what might be popular next year. And you have the creative director running the company, they're kind of doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And they ordering toilet rolls and doing the tax returns and stuff. That's not how you make games. So just partner with people to do the stuff you can't do or shouldn't be doing. And then you've got a good chance of success. But as I say, I'm looking at the game and looking at all the emotional interaction you might get from that game, how you share with the players, what's that joined up fun, what's the meta game that adds an extra layer to the gameplay itself. So I think it's just being a kid myself at heart that gets me excited. There's a danger that some of the large games made in large corporations are becoming a bit formulaic, and they're just adding another layer of gloss to it rather than another layer of innovative gameplay. And I think it's important currently with the correction we've had post-COVID that there was too many games being made. Mm-hmm. Games as a service also meaning that a lot of people are staying in the same game for longer because they're invested emotionally and monetarily in that game, that you really have to have innovative ideas, and most of those come from the indie space. And so I'll get excited by new ideas rather than rinse and repeat.
Yeah, that is so true. It's running at so many times when I've been at big companies as well as, my own companies. And like, you're at a company like an EA and there's a conversation about like what we should invest in. It always starts with, well, is there a comp for this idea? And like if that's the lens by which we're investing, it's like exactly what you said, looking in the rear view mirror to see what was successful means you're never going to get anything new. Yeah. And I have this theory. I would love to get your thoughts, and I know we've kept you very long, but maybe one last question. The industry has, like, the last few years has been tough. The big budget games get riskier and riskier because they're getting more and more expensive to make. What do you think? Where do you think we're all going? Like, what? I have a theory about like where creativity is going to come from. I.e. the bottom end, the low cost part of the market. But where do we go?
Well, I think one thing we have to recognize in a positive way is that the game industry will continue to grow. It's a $250 billion a year industry. 3 billion people are playing it. There's still large portions of the global population that don't play games in a meaningful way. We're all games players at heart. So it's just finding the right content for the right people on the right platforms at the right time and at the right price. So there's a huge opportunity for innovation rising from some of the problems we've had. I wouldn't say the industry became complacent, but it's definitely a time where new ideas will emerge through necessity. I think this has focused everybody's minds, this current correction. But I remain 100% positive for the industry. And we have to understand that you can't keep making the same stuff. I mean, you look at Generation Z, Generation Alpha, kind of TikTok mentality for entertainment that lasts no longer than 15 seconds. Are we making content for these people in a meaningful way? What about the creator economy? What about spatial computing? What about enabling people to monetize their game? I mean, there are so many areas that we looked at as an industry without always doing it. I say playing the safe route. Understandable, because there are costs, and people have costs in their lives that they have to pay for, and it's often very risky to try something new. But you shouldn't be afraid of failure. Failure is just success, work in progress. You'll learn from those mistakes, and ultimately you'll become successful. But I think what I'm talking about, Generation Z and Generation Alpha, they probably want a different type of game for them, whether it's creating or certainly coming together And I think there's probably still a demand for every type of game, but unless people grasp innovation, I fear that I don't want to see anybody on the scrap heap of failure. I want everyone to be successful. But you have to move with the times. And technology drives innovation in the games industry like no other entertainment industry. Mm-hmm. It's always been additive. When music's always been substitutional, a new platform kind of means the last platform goes away. But with games, it's start off with PCs and then home consoles, and then smartphones become a thing. AR, VR, mixed reality, Web3. I mean, there's just everything gets added on. So
yeah,
there are enough platforms out there of today's and those that are coming that allows opportunity. It's just you have to grasp that opportunity and say, you know what, I'm going for it, and not to be afraid of failure.
Love that. That's the positive outlook that I think everybody needs. Just go out and try things.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ian. It's going to be all right.
It is going to be all right. It's fine. Worry not. But just try to stay away from the derivative stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like Tomb Raider, but she's got 3 guns there too.
That's not an innovation. Huh?
That's good.
You have 2 new or recent books, if I'm correct. Dice Men did that come out last year?
Yeah, Dice Men came out at the end of 2022, and that was the origin story of Games Workshop.
Yes.
It's the first 10 years, all the kind of warts and all personal memoir, all about the living in the van and the mergers and all the kind of personal stuff that happened. So that's kind of a fun book. And more recently, Magic Realms, which is a coffee table book of all the art and artists I've worked with. And Steve's worked with.
I just ordered that one. That looks beautiful.
It is
Magic Realms.
Yeah, you should check that out, Aaron. You'll love that.
And I had a new Fighting Fantasy game book came out as well last year, rather. The Dungeon on Blood Island, and that'll be obviously appearing in the US through Steve Jackson Games in due course. And so I will continue to write more Fighting Fantasy game books because that's my passion, because I it's incredible the number of people who read them in the 80s who I bump into, and they just say how kind of saved them from a dark place, or empowered them and gave them kind of strength to go on these adventures when they might have been having a tough time as well, and help them to get to read, or start them off on their creative careers, whether it's in games or art or cartoons or film or whatever. A lot of people attribute Fighting Fantasy for giving them that spark that made them the people they are today, which we're forever grateful to know that, and very proud and humbled by it. And the other thing I've got is my school. It's a state school. It's not a private school in Bournemouth, where we're using a lot of games-based learning and project-based, and recognizing that we're all different. So don't criticize people punish them for doing what they're bad at, because they're never going to do it anyway, and try and make the school place a bit more like the workplace, and celebrate our differences and work in teams, and it's the application of knowledge, not just knowledge for knowledge's sake, and it's not teaching to the test. It's the application of knowledge and contextualizing everything, because I can't think in the abstract. I need something to relate to. So it's trying to help out in a new way of learning, and it's just got inspected by the government inspectors and got the highest rating you get. There's virtually zero absenteeism because people actually enjoy. Can you imagine learning could be fun, eh? I mean, that's the beauty about games. You are learning.
Yeah, you don't even know you're learning
when you're playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. It's effectively a management simulation, You're learning about the physics of the ride, the staffing levels required to run the rides, the price of those rides, and if you get it wrong, you're not told you did badly, you're useless. You can just quit.
I mean,
it's like an apprenticeship.
I watched my kids play Overcooked over break. I don't know if you've played this game, but it's sort of like cooperative Diner Dash or whatever. And they learned a lot about how to how to cooperate on a team or not.
And communication skills.
Yeah, exactly.
And strategy and creativity. It really inspires creativity. And when you're playing,
good on you for. I mean, I think that is so impressive. Taking everything that you've kind of learned and experienced along the way and channeling it back to the school. Do you spend time there? Do you teach at all?
Yeah, I give talks down there. And I went and gave everyone a copy of one of Five Adventure Game Books last year. But I also try and work with governments. I convinced government in 2014 to put coding on the curriculum, to change the ICT curriculum, which was largely teaching kids basic office skills. You don't need to spend a year learning Word, PowerPoint, and Excel using other people's software. My point was, you're teaching them how to read, but how to write. They need to move from the passenger seat of digital consumption into the driver's seat of digital creativity to forge a world that's been transformed by technology. So there's no point in training them like robots because they won't be able to compete with the real thing. So empower them to be operators in this digital world.
Right on. Love
That's
that.
Cool.
Love that. Okay, Ian, we've kept you way over.
I've enjoyed it. It's been fun.
It has.
Awesome. Makes me want to go and play a game now, rather than
I will check my inbox for an invitation to your game club. Would love to come play with you guys.
We don't let outsiders in ever.
Americans, no Americans allowed.
I'll bring some Kentucky bourbon or something for the cup. If,
that makes it worse. I only drink Scotch whiskey.
All right, I'll keep looking for an angle. But thanks so much for hanging out with us. So great to catch up.
Yeah,
so really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah,
honor me and you, Ian.
Yes, and we'll see you around. Was that everything you hoped it would be?
Dude. Yeah, there was one moment in the whole thing, many moments that were great, but one moment where something clicked, where you asked him a question about like he doesn't really use data, he kind of just knows what's good, like he could see it right away. And I was thinking about these books that he has, like they just look like something you want to buy. Like the graphic design is cool, the color, the feel. And that's kind of
Aaron
how
just held up 2 books, Dice Men, which is it's like a history of Games Workshop, right? The origin story, and Magic Realms, which is an art book
of stuff. Yeah, but they're just like, when I got it, I didn't know they looked like this, and I got them and I opened the box and I was like, whoa, these are neat. Like even if you don't like open them, they just look neat. Like something you want to grab. And I think that's the secret to Warhammer too, because it's like you walk by it and you're like, that's just neat. And you just want to get it. Like the box is cool, like the you know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's a good taste, I guess. And the same thing with Lara Croft, right? And Tomb Raider. Like that game was like just neat. Like everything about it was.
Well, you could tell just by looking at it that it was appealing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that for the obvious reasons. So don't judge me for that comment.
Yeah, it was low poly, dude. You couldn't really.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how many polys.
Yeah. Have you seen the costumes that people made of the low poly Lara Croft, and they would wear them?
Oh yeah.
They were so cool, like the masks and like the breast area was like really sharp.
Okay, come on. Let's keep this family oriented, Aaron.
It is. Yeah.
Did your kids ever dress up as video game characters for Halloween?
What does Batman count? Batman was one time.
That's a comic book character.
Yeah, which has been in video games.
Yeah.
No, they've been doing a lot of generic stuff, and for some reason, a lot of them like to be the ballerina. I don't know why, or a cat ballerina person, which is like okay. Yeah,
it's original.
Not too creative.
I think Owen was what's that Minecraft like Steve? Is that like that? They're
oh yeah.
You play as there's a name, right? Steve, yeah. I think he had a Minecraft axe. And then the one year it hasn't come out yet, has it?
No.
The Minecraft movie? Jack Black? Yeah. All right. What's your prediction? Is that going to be good? What's the over-under?
I think it's going to be bad. I don't know.
Now, why do you say that? Because the Mario movie was very good. Why do you say? I
think Mario has a bigger. First of all, I think it's really hard to make good video game movies. There have been very few that have been good. In my opinion, I agree with Sir Ian that the Lara Croft movies were really good. The Tomb Raider ones, those were good. I think even when the first one came out, everyone's like, finally a good video game movie, you know? Like where the character looks like the character, you know, like a lot of the vibe is like transferred over really well. I think Minecraft is so weird and storyless, kind of, you know? I'm guessing. I don't know. It just doesn't feel. It feels like
it does seem like it might be a bigger challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like they're going to try to do a lot of gimmicky stuff, you know, like gags and.
Yeah. Like a good film needs good story, needs good characters, needs stakes. And
I mean, maybe they pull it off. Like, no. I think it's too hard of a challenge.
I hope so.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah, of course. Everybody wins when it's a good movie, right?
We'll see. We'll play this little clip back when the movie comes back to see if you're right or wrong. Yeah.
You know what I did see this morning? The Wizards of the Coast just announced that Magic the Gathering will get its own cinematic universe, similar to like Marvel. So that was just in the news this morning, I think.
Movies.
For Magic the Gathering. Yeah. Huh. And, you know, Warhammer has a thing called Warhammer Plus, which I'm subscribed to. It's good.
Really?
Yes. And it's really cool. They have like a Netflix thing. So there's tons of video stuff. And they have like a section that teaches you how to like master classes on painting. Again, we're not sponsored, but it's very, very cool. It's like $6 a month. I'm like trying to sell it. It's so neat though, because it just makes the hobby like it's so deep. You know, it's like a whole universe, you know, there's movies, there's books, and by the way, when I was telling you the story, I went to the store yesterday. They have a thing called Battle Honors. I completed it. It's a book. It took me like, you know, I was like kind of doing it, but I finally completed it after this. I've been doing it for so long. I had the old one and I never they have like a new one. Anyways, I got all these free stuff. Huh. It's just a cool hobby, man. It's like Aaron went in deep. It's like, cause it's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sir Ian. So,
yes. Back to Ian. I did think Ian has had an incredible run of success, even beyond Games Workshop and Eidos.
Tomb Raider. It's crazy.
On sort of like the investment side too. He's kind of gotten in on like either investing in companies or advising companies. He's got his own VC firm with a bunch of wins. And I do think it is interesting to listen to him talk about how he makes decisions about creativity or projects or games. And it is very much what you said. It's like, you know, being a tastemaker, less about quant and more about taste.
Yeah. You know, I think it's going to go back. Do you think that we're on like the cusp of that becoming a more common thing? Because I feel like the AI and like
where taste matters. I hope so.
Yeah. Like I'm seeing like the mobile market is like starting to like, the mobile market feels really strange. Like, have you been there recently? Have you like perused it?
Yeah. So,
like everything feels like
Ivy plays this game called Block Blast, which is kind of like, it's a variation of Tetris. But when you play it, and I totally agree with you, and here's my assessment of what's really strange about it. It's completely ad supported, which, okay, fine. It's got incentivized ads. Okay, give me another turn. I'll watch an ad. But it does, it's not a game. You can see the algorithm of like what shapes it gives you when, because it's not random. It is absolutely 1,000,000% not random. It is 100,000,000% manipulative.
Okay.
In terms of like, you know, you get shapes and you have to fit them into the board, and you have a certain hole to fill, and it gives you that shape and you fill it. Ooh, I feel good. and then you've got a wide open board, and it gives you a string of shapes that you can't complete. So it forces you out to watch an ad. It's manipulative that way using the actual gameplay. And I played it. At first, I just played it because I'm going to beat Ivy's score. Spoiler: I did not beat her score. But then I'm like, okay, I guess I got to study this and break this down a little bit. And then I ended up having this conversation with her. I was like, why do you play this game? Because it's clearly not a game. It's clearly not. There's no random distribution of pieces here. It is 100% manipulating you. And she's like, yeah, I know. I don't care. It's fun.
Interesting. Well, that's how TV shows were in soap operas, right? Like it was like they had to write the story like ad placement. So when the commercial was like, there was a whole price point there, right? So if your ad is always in the just after like a cliffhanger, like that is like a higher price point versus like, you're in the first ad section. Do you know what I mean? So like when you're watching a show and it's like, oh my goodness, he's dead. And then it like cuts and she's like, oh, it's you. And then they don't show who it's you is. And then it cuts. Welcome to McDonald's. When we on it, that is the most expensive commercial, right? Because it's going to have more eyeballs and people are going to hang out to wait who it's you is. They're not going to get up and like, because they don't want to miss.
Yeah, but
you know what
I'm talking about so like the 1970s now. But
it's like the same anymore. Mentality. Yeah. Well, it's like the news too. Right now, the news it's all clickbait.
Yeah. The whole world, yes, everything is manipulative.
Yeah. So
my point is, so your point is like you see that manipulation, and you're like, I don't like this.
Yeah, but some things aren't, right? Like we actually just interviewed a guest, I'm not going to say who it is, but they talk about it too. Like there's this like artistic side that is not, that there is no like metrics. It's just taste. There's no like, there's no formula there. Like analytics, I guess is the word that I want to use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, would you make a game if like, imagine like this is the pitch. Okay. I'm pitching you a game, Alex.
Okay.
There's going to be no analytics. 0%.
Wait, is this your pony game?
No, this would be the Hidden Czars. So the Hidden Czars. No, we're not going to use any analytics. 0%. We're not going to test the market. We're like you just go through the list and it's like, it's just going to be something that I would want to play. Like that's the pitch. Like that's probably like, you wouldn't want to invest in that. You know what I mean? There's going to be no AI.
It depends on who's pitching it.
That's true. Let's say it's me, but you're right. Depends on who's pitching it. Like Steven Spielberg's like, I'm going to make a movie I want to watch. It's like, okay, here's 40
Yeah, we'll probably want to watch it too. Yeah. Here you go. It's worked before. Do it again. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for our inaugural episode of season 3. I hope you enjoyed our chat with Ian Livingstone. And we shall see you next time.
Yes. See you, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Fourth Curtain Podcast. Visit us at thefourthcurtain.com to find our monthly newsletter and support the show via Patreon. The Fourth Curtain Podcast is a production of Fourth Curtain Media. Lovingly edited by Bryen Hensley of Noise Floor Sound Solutions. Production support by May Lee with community management by Doug Zartman and art production by Paul Russell. Thanks again for listening.